December 29th, 1890. It is now December 30th, 2012. Yesterday was the anniversary of the Wounded Knee Massacre. The Wounded Knee Massacre happened near Wounded Knee Creek on the Lakota Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, USA. It was the last battle of the American Indian War. 1890. At least 150 men, women, and children of the Lakota Sioux had been killed and 51 wounded. Some estimates place the number of dead at 300. So 300, 150 to 300. There was not as much, it said over 100, but there was a Wounded Knee Massacre that happened here in Kentucky. It happened at Yahoo Falls in McCreary County. At Yahoo Falls, there was over 100 Cherokee elder men, women, and children that were killed. They were organizing underneath the Yahoo Falls so they would know where a peaceful settlement is, and then that's when Princess Corn Blossom, Doublehead's daughter, along with Jake Troxel, comes and they see all the Cherokee dead. They see all the dead bodies just everywhere at Yahoo Falls, and then they track the people down and they shoot them. But the Yahoo Falls Massacre. There's a Yahoo Falls Massacre. So, Yahoo Falls Massacre. Some versions of the massacre suggest that Chief Redbird was Doublehead's daughter, her son Little Jake. At the scene of the massacre, Chief Redbird lived out his later years in Clay County, Kentucky, with a friend, a relative named Jack, who may have been crippled at the massacre. They were brutally attacked in their sleep by a party of white men. An angry young man at the party that lost his father, some say at Yahoo Falls Massacre, mutilated Chief Redbird and Jack in their sleep with their own tomahawks, threw their bodies into the Redbird River, and stole their belongings. Not long after the crime, Redbird's longtime friend John Gilbert discovered the slaughtered bodies. The angry young man, said to have had an odd surname, returned to the scene just as John Gilbert was pulling the bodies ashore. Together they buried the elder Cherokee in the sandy floor of a nearby rock shelter where he frequently visited. Some of the traditional Cherokee symbols inscribed in the rock shelter are thought to be associated with the massacre, including death symbols of women with child, and children. Perhaps the biggest problem with all the versions of the massacre, written or oral histories, is that Big Jake's wife, Kaho's sister, Doublehead's daughter, was named Princess Corn Blossom. The first problem with the name Princess Corn Blossom is that there's no such thing as a Cherokee princess. The term came from the time when Moytoy was the principal chief of the Cherokee. Sir Alexander Cumming proclaimed him as king of his people. If Moytoy was a king, then his daughters must have been princesses. Doublehead was the son of the Great Eagle, who was son of Moytoy. The tribal leadership was passed down from father to son. Princess is the way 18th century English communicated the kin term daughter of a chief. Secondly, the name Corn Blossom is not a Cherokee word, while corn tassel and corn silk are Cherokee words that approximate corn blossom. They're masculine names. One of the Doublehead's children, by Katayi Wilson, was named Tassel, gender unknown, not born until about 1798. Cherokee census and enrollment records indicate that Doublehead had 4 daughters living with him at the time. Tuckahoe brought Big Jake to Salachi, and they were all very close in age. Which one caught the eye of Big Jake Troxel? Both were reported as wives of Colonel George Colbert. You could roll out one of them. I don't know. There's all these different names. Yeah, so many innocent women and children who knew no wrong died here. Yahoo Falls Massacre. On January 31st, 1811, just months after the Yahoo Falls Massacre that happened in 1810, either in August or October. So January 31st, 1811, just months after the Yahoo Falls Massacre, the former Cherokee land was granted for sale at a minimal price of 10 cents an acre in order to encourage the development of iron and salt works. As salt was an expensive commodity at $25 a barrel, the families who had orchestrated the Yahoo Falls Massacre purchased the land containing the salt springs and became rich. Perhaps the most fitting words to describe the Yahoo Falls Massacre site can be found in Joseph Horn Cloud's monument next to the mass grave site at Wounded Knee Memorial. Many innocent women and children who knew no wrong died here. So, although most American history books don't include this war. The first war that was declared by Congress in 1790 has been referred to President George Washington's Indian War, the struggle for the Old Northwest. In December of 1790, Kentucky settlers petitioned Congress to fight the Cherokee in whatever way they saw fit. A board of war was appointed, and on May 23rd, 1791, it authorized the destruction of Cherokee towns and food resources by burning homes and crops. Collins, 1847. In an attempt to make peace with the Cherokee and redefine the new boundary lines in Kentucky, the United States negotiated the Treaty of Holston on July 2nd, 1791. It restated that the Cherokee land in Kentucky would be restricted in the area east of the Little South Fork and south of the Cumberland River. This time, the treaty was signed by Kentucky-born Cherokee Tautuska, a.k.a. Doublehead, his brother, Ganagadoga, a.k.a. Standing Turkey, and Doublehead's sister son, John Watts Jr., Ganodisji, and witnessed by Thomas Kennedy, representative of Kentucky in the territory of the United States south of the Ohio River. Fortunately, the borderline remained unclear and disputed by Cherokee not present at the treaty signing, and the fighting continued. So, Standing Turkey and Doublehead and John Watts all signed a treaty saying that they had land south of the Cumberland River and east of the Little South Fork. On March 28th, 1795, Cherokee warriors attacked a group of Americans who were trespassing against white Americans on the sacred ceremonial land and burial sites located at the Goose Creek Salt Lick. One of them was killed, and their horses were taken in hopes that the Americans would not return. White, 1932, is the last documented Cherokee skirmish in Kentucky. Collins, 1847. So, the Treaty of Greenville, negotiated in Ohio, August 3rd, 1795, ended the war. It was made between Mad General Anthony Wayne, commander of the Army of the United States, and the Wyandot, Delaware, Shawnee, Ottawa, a bunch of other ones. Although the treaty tried to settle controversies and restore harmony and friendly intercourse between the U.S. and all Indian nations, the Cherokee were not permitted to attend. The Cherokee did not sign the Treaty of Greenville. The Cherokee are some badasses. And I also just read that possibly the origin of Kentucky is a Cherokee word. And so I'm thinking it could be Iroquois, it could be Shawnee, it could be Cherokee. Kentucky, it might just be obfuscated in history. You know, just lost in the annals of time. So, the Cherokees weren't even allowed to attend the Treaty of Greenville, so they didn't sign it, which the Treaty of Greenville really broke the back of the Shawnee. Cherokees who were living north of the Ohio River returned to their homes in southern Kentucky. Tanner, 1978. Within the next decade, more than 300 Euro-American males above the age of 21 moved into the land ceded by the treaty, including Clay County. White, 1932. Redbird spent a good deal of his time with his friend Will in the vicinity of two rock shelters on the east and west banks of the Kentucky River, a stretch of the upper headwaters known today as Redbird River and Spurlock. There's engraved images of a wild potato, bird, wolf, and deer clans. It was in this setting that Redbird and Will were murdered. Redbird and Will, brutally murdered, maliciously tomahawked to death by two men from Tennessee, Edward Miller, known as Ned, and John Livingston, known as Jack. Ned and Jack killed Redbird and Will. Edward Miller and John Livingston from Tennessee. That's who killed Chief Redbird. The 1810 mass grave behind Yahoo Falls, which was exposed during logging operations in the 1930s. At the time, it was impossible to walk into the shelter without stepping on human remains weathering out of the grave. It is hauntingly similar to the size and shape of the mass grave of the Wounded Knee Massacre of 1890. But happened 80 years beforehand. So, the Yahoo Falls Massacre. Over 100 Cherokee men and women and babies and old men were killed. John Jack Livingston Edward Ned Miller found and cruelly murdered Red Bird and Will. Talking about where several times they killed Cherokee people in Kentucky. John Russell and his men who were traveling Hobbs pursued vengeance surviving Cherokee warriors to the shallow river crossing the headwaters of the Kentucky River in present-day Clay County. Russell and his men took refuge nearby and shot to death two of the escaping Cherokee warriors and badly wounded another as they tried to cross the river. Summers 1903. Since then, the site was known as a place where the Cherokee could be found and killed, and that's where they killed Redbird and Will. So Redbird, Chief Redbird was slaughtered, right? Doublehead was actually killed by his own people. It was clear to Sevier that the murder had been committed by citizens of the state of Tennessee, which were under his jurisdiction. As a trained lawyer, Sevier knew that he had to respond as the incident was a direct violation of the United States Treaty with the Cherokee. On January 12, 1797, Sevier wrote a letter to the Cherokee agent, Silas Dinsmore, to be read out loud to the Cherokee. Initially, Sevier wanted to express his condolences for the murder of Redbird by stating that he doubted any of his people would do such a thing. Later, he decided to strike out this section of the letter. So that's separate from the Yahoo Falls massacre. The Yahoo Falls massacre. There's a I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that's out here. But this woman is saying that there was excavation in the 1930s. They petitioned the state in 1928 and nothing was done about it. And they've been in contact with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So yeah, Yahoo Falls massacre in McCreary County, Kentucky. Skippakitaki, the town in Kentucky. The last Shawnee town. It could be in danger. If you ever visit the 3,500-acre span in eastern Clark County, Indian Oldfields, you'll notice that it's flat. This fertile anomie located between the Lulbagrud Creek and Upper Howard's Creek is surrounded to the west by mountainous land and east by knobby soil. It is home to many different Native Americans dating back to prehistoric times. One of the more famous settlements in Indian Oldfields was the nearly non-pronounceable Skippakitaki Shawnee trading town. A French census circa 1736 says 800 to 1,000 Shawnee lived there. By the time Daniel Boone arrived in Clark County in 1769, the settlement was a pile of ash. The settlement's exact location, said Dr. Harry Enoch, a local historian, has never been found. We never solved the mystery, because there's going to be a construction of an interchange. Begins on the interchange between Mountain Parkway and Kidville Road. So they're going to be building a big road over Skippakitaki, the hometown of Kentucky, the hometown of probably the birthplace of the name. The best story about the birthplace of Kentucky's name is Skippakitaki, one of the permanent settlements. Let's go to Skippakitaki, that Kentucky place, the Kentucky thing. Kentucky, white people always making just, corn stalk and little turtle. They just always making anglicizing the Indian names of stuff. So Skippakitaki is too long to say, so let's just call it Kentucky. Indians, they said that some people say that they never lived in Kentucky, but if that's what you were told in 8th grade history, throw out the textbook, such as New History of Kentucky. That's what it says. Indian Oldfields is littered with history, with artifacts dating back to 8,000 years before the birth of Jesus. So the Indian Oldfields is littered with history, artifacts dating back to 8,000 years before Jesus. 8,000 years, so that's 10,000 years ago at least. So if you date back between 10,000 years ago, Shawnee had been in America way longer than any Europeans ever been in America. I've even heard 30,000. From 30,000 to 10,000 is when they was crossing the land bridge. They could be here for 30,000 years old, 30,000-year-old ancestors. Burial mounds left behind by the Adena people who lived between 2,500 and 1,800 years ago also spot the state. You can find them in Boone County and Madison counties. Native Americans placed cremated remains in the mounds or sometimes laid their dead out and built the mounds on top of them. Much racier myths about the mounds were falsely attributed to Shawnee. Lucian Beckner theorized that the Shawnee used to burn them at the stake. I don't know.